Good afternoon, everybody. This is David Stearns from Haley Marketing, and welcome to today's Lunch with Haley event. Today is one of our most fun webinars of the year to do. This is our Staffing World recap session. So just a couple of weeks ago, although right now it feels like forever ago, just a couple of weeks ago, Brad, Kathy, Brian, Ryan, Paula, and I were in Chicago for the fun chaos that is Staffing World. It was a phenomenal conference. Uh, in the next probably closer to an hour and a half will be my guess. We'll do our best to keep it close to an hour, but we've got a lot of content. But during that time frame, we're going to do our best to recap a lot of what we've learned. But candidly, it's hard to do Staffing World justice in just over an hour because there was so much amazing content this year. Some phenomenal keynotes that we'll recap for you, and tons of good breakouts. And then, unfortunately, I wish we had more time just to tell you about all the new technology and stuff that we saw at Staffing World. We're going to touch on it in a little bit. But for those of you who have not already planned ahead, next year's in Washington, D.C., and make sure to join us there for Staffing World 2018. But with that said, let's get into Staffing World 2017. So as I mentioned, we're going to do a lot to cover a ton of ground. If you have questions along the way, you can use the question dialog box in GoToWebinar. Also, our social media team standing by, so you can tweet away at them with the hashtag #LunchWithHaley, and they will also help to answer questions as we're talking. So let's jump right in. As I mentioned, there's a ton of content that we saw. So let's start with the keynotes from this year's session. And I'm going to go first. The opening keynote, the first day, was on the topic of harnessing innovation. And the speaker was a gentleman named Josh Linkner, who was just had a fascinating presentation. Now, I love innovation. That's sort of a core value to us at Haley Marketing Group, is being innovative. But Josh had some phenomenal points, and just to kind of summarize the bullets that are on the screen, essentially a company that doesn't take risks, from a creative perspective, from a business perspective, is a company that's not going to have growth. In fact, you're probably going to have negative growth. If you want to seize your potential, you have to get your team to be taking creative risks in how you sell and how you service. One of the challenges that businesses have when they get successful is we become afraid to take risks, or even worse, we get arrogant and we think that we know the right way because we've been so successful. So you really have to fight hard. The bigger you get, the more money you make, the more successful you are, the more successful you are in your own job. You have to fight seeing yourself as being too good, and instead you have to constantly be challenging yourself, not relying on past business models. Everyone's heard the definition of insanity. If I do things the same way and expect a different result, that's insanity. Well, Josh didn't exactly say this, but he sort of implied this. That definition of insanity doesn't really hold true. The new definition of insanity is if I do things the same way and I expect them to yield the same result, they're probably not going to. The market's changing, our clients are changing, technology is changing, the staffing industry is changing, and if we keep selling and servicing the way we've done it for the last 20, 30 years, or even the way we've done it for the last 2 years, we're not going to see the same results going forward. As the gig economy explodes, as on-demand staffing models increase, as total workforce solutions take over, we have to be ready to adapt. And Josh's last point is we all need to become disruptors. Disruptors, companies like Uber and Amazon that went in and changed industries. Now, you may not change the entire staffing industry, but you may say, I can change my local market, I can change my company, I can become a threat to my competitors in the way we approach our business. And so how did Josh say you do that? He said, really innovative companies have 5 traits. The first trait is they're very, very curious. Curiosity is the building block of creativity. So if you just rely on past experience to make decisions, that's really outdated thinking. Before you make any decision, ask yourself questions like why, what if, why not? And what you're trying to do with questions like that is challenge conventional wisdom. If this is how we filled that job yesterday, is Why do we do it that way? Is that the most intelligent process? Is it the most cost effective? Does it yield the best talent? Is it a better fit, better longevity? Force yourself to challenge every business practice you have and how you sell and how you service and how you recruit. And that's how you drive innovation. That sort of relates to the second point, which is defying tradition. Traditions are great. They give us foundations. They give us something to rely on. They help train people, but they also can be deadly. They limit our thinking and our ability to adapt, because when we rely on the past, we're not ready for the future. So when we look at a business problem, we even look at our day-to-day activities, we want to constantly take time out to say, is there a better way? One of the cool things that we do at Haley Marketing Group that I'd recommend you steal from us is about once every 3 or 4 months, we do this thing called Innovations Day. So we take out time from our jobs, usually it's about 2/3 of a day, and everybody sits back and says, how could we do things better? How could we create innovations around the things that we're doing every day? And everyone steps back. They may look at their own individual job. They may look at a department, a product, a service, but they say, is there a better way? Could we be faster? Could we improve the service process? Could we reduce the cost? We try to find better ways to innovate. And you can use that in your business. Every once in a while, take everybody off the front lines and say, how could we do it better? Another question that Josh says you should ask yourself that I sort of loved was, says, if we didn't have any rules to follow, how would we do this activity? How would we achieve this goal? And he tries to do things like just completely flipping processes on their head. He called it the judo flip. And what would happen if we flip this idea around, take a new approach to how we recruit? So instead of getting the order from the client and then figuring out who we need to source, what if you flipped it on its head and said, we're going to be more like agents in the entertainment world, and we're going to find candidates and represent them? That's an example of a judo flip. The third thing innovative companies do is they crave what's next. So they throw out the past and they try to think about, what's the next version of our service going to look like? And they look outside their industry for amazing ideas, like what's happening in the world of technology, retail, entertainment, what's happening in manufacturing or the industries you serve. You find inspiration from what other people are doing, and then you think about, how do I bring that to staffing and recruiting? And then lastly, you think about the experience for the customer. What do they want next? What are they can't even they envision today that would make our services so good the customer wouldn't want to go to anybody else? Now, this doesn't have to cost a lot of money, and that's what point 4 is about, is getting scrappy. It's not about throwing thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars at a problem. It's about creativity and determination, sometimes even taking away resources. If we had no money to solve this problem, how would we solve it? There's some really cool examples that he shared. If you turn, what was it? TNT Television wanted to add drama to their lineup, but they weren't known for drama. So go to YouTube and do a Google search, and you can see a rebranding effort that they did, where they made this little video that cost them next to nothing, and they got 56 million people to watch the video because they were really scrappy about how to rebrand themselves through YouTube. And lastly, think about adapting fast. Innovation isn't this thing where I sit around and I get this big lightning bolt of inspiration. It comes from tiny innovations that we're implementing every single day. It's about making creativity a daily habit and getting everybody in your organization to think, how can I make what I'm doing 1% better? If I do that 100 days in a row, I've doubled the performance of my personal work efforts, or I've doubled the performance of my team, or I've doubled the performance of the organization. So that was the first keynote. We're going to jump now to the next one. And Ryan, if you'll talk to us about work that matters.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. So the main thrust of Jonathan Mildenhall's keynote here on doing work that matters was really focused on purpose. Purpose drives performance because it's personal. It's something we can deeply identify with. It ensures the right kind of growth, and it results in legacy marketing that defines a firm long after the campaigns that are driven by it. I'd like to share a couple of examples Jonathan gave, because I think it's the most effective way to take this from the abstract to the real, so you can really sense the impact that a well-defined purpose has on messaging and action. Coca-Cola's brand purpose is the antidote to modern-day woes. So yes, thirst is one, but also isolation, depression, suspicion, sexism, racism. When he shared the story when Martin Luther King was assassinated in '68, Coca-Cola sent a plane to secure his body and said to Atlanta, spare no expense for his funeral. And Atlanta was one of the only major cities in the U.S. that didn't have race riots that weekend. But Coke said, we're still not doing enough against segregation. We have white ads and black ads, but not together. Then they became the first advertiser to show them together. It was actually shot in 1969, and it didn't run until '71. Coke actually preserved tens of thousands of hate letters they received once they did air it. And they knew that regardless of the misguided anger of some, their purpose was driving their message, the antidote to modern day woes. And Jonathan also talked about the importance of questioning your clients about their purpose. He said, when you listen to the voice of the consumer, your marketing strategy is done for you. That really rings true. They actually did this in Pakistan and India, two countries ripped apart by a 65-year-old dispute over cashmere. And what Coke did, they actually built vending machines, and which you could see a visual here. They ran a video of what this looked like. They call it the Small World Machine, whereby when someone in India walks up to one of the vending machines to get a Coke, they see someone in Pakistan doing the same. And they can actually join hands on the screen, trace things together like a peace sign or a happy face, and even do a dance together. And that was all born out of them learning that the two cultures and groups felt so far apart from one another. They wanted to bring them together. So how does this apply to staffing? Well, first, it's important that you understand the purpose of your firm. If your focus is light industrial staffing, your purpose is bigger than filling jobs. What happens if those jobs go unfilled? Will the machines run? Now, all of a sudden, you've got this new perspective, and now your purpose is to keep those machines running, not just to fill temps. I'd encourage anyone that has questions about their company's purpose to think about the greater meaning of your work this way, and asking your clients what their purpose is, and your candidates as well. That allows you to do something truly powerful to match purpose-driven companies with purpose-driven talent. It also allows you to craft a phenomenal core story and messaging that truly differentiates you from the Me Too commoditized staffing firms that you compete against. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Ryan. And I will say for this next keynote, whenever you get to walk by the setup area and you see someone setting up a drum set, you know it's going to be a good keynote. And that's what we went into for the Mark Schulman keynote speech, where for those who don't know, he's actually a really famous celebrity drummer who's worked on acts such as Pink, Cher, and Billy Joel. And he really believes that everything is a performance. And what does that really mean? But every single interaction you ever have is a way that you can help showcase your attitudes, your beliefs, and how you want yourself to be portrayed. And for example, one of his acts that he performs with, Pink, calls him Disneyland, for no other reason than every single time he's performing, he is the happiest he could ever possibly be. And because of that, he is known as the happiest place on earth, or the happiest man on earth, hence being called Disneyland. And he really believes this idea that every moment that you live is a series of nows, and you have to take every now seriously, and you have to perform to the absolute best that you ever can do. And he kind of followed that up with the idea of the ABCs. That attitude leads to behavior that leads to consequence. And you can't have a positive and negative thought at the exact same time. So always make it a positive thought. That positive thought leads to a positive attitude. That positive attitude leads to behavior. So you start to smile, you start to exude happiness, and then that leads to positive consequences. And it all really snowballs together to make a really impactful and powerful way of how you can live your life. He also believed in the idea that you need to shift your attitude that you have for people, maybe from that negative to that gratitude. So for us in the staffing industry, sometimes we feel like we might have a candidate that maybe we can't place right now, or we have a job order that we can't really find the best candidate for. Instead of saying, oh, I have to place this, or I have to place this candidate, shift that thinking around and say, well, you know what, I get to help this candidate find their new passion, find their new job in life, and really help them become something a little bit more than they are today. So it's a really cool way of being able to shift your viewpoint to help really provide the best possible experience. And that kind of goes to a little bit of the end here, where it's really our passion that drives us. It's that attitude. It's that desire to do great things and be a happy person that really drives us every single day, and that purpose that keeps us going day in and day out to provide great service in our industry, to provide great service and attitude to everybody around us. You can either fear disruption or you can embrace it. You can make a decision and stick to it and be successful. Because with at the end of the day, every interaction that you have with a client or a candidate, that's what they're going to judge you on. That's what they're going to judge the company on. So you might as well make it the best possible interaction that you ever can make it. And I think we have Kathy up next with the Industrial Revolution 2.0.
Hi, Brian. Thanks. Yeah, I was going to be talking about Mick Ebling. He's from Not Impossible Labs, and he was talking on the principle of enlightened capitalism, just the idea that you can be successful and do good work while also doing good in the community or as part of the bigger picture. And I suggest that you look at his website sometime, notimpossiblelabs.com, and to tell you some of the things that he's done, such as Project Daniel, where they were able to create prosthetic limbs with a 3D printer, and some of the work they're doing in terms of allowing deaf people to hear music. And that particular item is now being tested on controlling Parkinson's tremors. But the way that this came about for him was just the idea of trying to do good, that twin principles we've been talking about through this of having purpose and innovating. And you can kind of get overwhelmed by the idea of trying to help everybody because there's so many people in the world that need help. But if you just help one, you end up helping many. And that's how he approached it. And I kind of, to try and bring that back to the work we do every day, with our clients, like there is no way that you can fill every job or find a job for every candidate. But if you find one candidate their ideal job, or if you find the perfect candidate for any one company, you're making the community stronger and you're making the company stronger. So in that way, you're taking that one-on-one interaction and applying it to a greater good. And that was what I took away from that. And it was they did a really good job in terms of selecting the speakers we had this year, because they all really came to those twin purposes of purpose and innovation. And I think we're back to David now.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Yeah, that overall theme of finding your purpose, Kathy, you're exactly right. It was really cool to see all these speakers talk about it in different ways, from the chief marketing officer of Airbnb talking about a purpose that goes way beyond beating the hotel industry, to talking about Coca-Cola having this mission of servicing people, and then this Not Impossible Labs blew me away. I mean, you mentioned the prosthetic limbs, but what you didn't say, Kathy, is that not only did they do this, but they did it on site in Africa for $100 a person, as opposed to the traditional cost of $15,000 for a prosthetic limb, making it possible for all of these kids who are amputees to be able to use their hands again, to walk again. It was very inspiring and a great lesson for everybody on turning purpose into passion into actual tangible products and services. All right, so we are going to transition a little bit and now take a look at some of the breakout sessions. So I hoped everyone liked listening to Kathy, because she had the opportunity to go to many more sessions than all the rest of us, but we're all going to do our best to try to contribute where we can. And Kathy, you're going to have the lion's share of the work of this next section, although we're going to start off with Brad.
Thanks so much, David. David and I had the privilege of doing a pre-conference workshop. So right before the keynote speaker came on, David and I had a chance to speak with attendees. And we were kind of fearful going in. Pre-conference, we were wondering if anybody was going to show up early, and we were pleasantly surprised to see well over 200 people in the room. And we had the honor to talk about selling staffing. And as the title of our presentation goes, really how not to sell staffing. And our presentation was really born out of a sales call that David received. So we periodically have staffing agencies call and ask about our hiring challenges. And this one particular staffing sales rep called David and said, "Hi, I'd like to help you solve your hiring challenges. And to David's surprise, he pretty much said, "Oh, I didn't realize I had hiring challenges right now." And as the call went on, really there was no purpose for this call. The staffing sales rep didn't do any of their homework up front. Spending 5 minutes on our website, they could have seen that we specialize in marketing for the staffing industry. This staffing sales rep had no idea. They could have looked and seen what specific jobs we were currently looking to fill on the job board on our website. They didn't take the time to do that. And then at the end of it, the sales rep even promised to follow up with some additional information and never sent anything. So 3 strikes. There was no chance at all that we were going to, number one, continue the conversation, or number 2, use their services at all. So the key takeaway here is make sure that your sales reps aren't making calls without doing their homework. Spend some time up front to plan out your call. Doesn't have to take a lot of time. Again, within the first 30 seconds of looking at the homepage on our site, the sales rep would have known that we work with similar types of companies as to the one he was calling. Also, don't ask for an order. Present a compelling reason to talk. If the sales rep would have said, "Hey, Mr. Stearns, I see that you specialize in the staffing industry. As you know, recruiting is a challenge right now. We just helped another marketing agency recruit some top-tier programmers who are really hard to find right now. Would you like me to tell you how we found them? Or would you like me to send over some candidates that match the exact positions that you're looking to fill right now on your website?" That approach would have yielded much better results. And why? Because it was focusing on the true problem that we have, not focusing on the services that you offer. So that acronym, WIIFN, FM, what's in it for me? You need to make your sales pitches less sales pitches and think about what's in it for the person that you're calling. If you can solve their problem, you can turn their headache and turn that around and provide a solution, you're going to earn their business, and you're going to build yourself from a vendor to a trusted advisor. David, anything to add here?
The real thing that we talked about at the end was thinking about what is the value of staffing and making sure that the people who are selling know how to translate the value of temporary help, temp to hire, direct hire, payrolling, on-site management into the language of the customer. So, from Brad's example at Haley Marketing Group, what's the value of hiring? Well, how much time do we lose from the management team when we need to fill a job order? It's significant. What's the cost of that time? What's the impact on our clients when we have a vacancy on our team? What does it do to our customer service? What does it do to customer retention? What does it do to the quality of delivery? A salesperson should understand from the client's industry, the client's language, so that with them, what's in it for me, becomes really natural for them to talk about with the client, and it leads to very productive conversations that will come back to staffing because they don't start with staffing. Anything else, Brad, or should we move on to Kathy?
No, I think we can move on.
All right. Kathy, you are up.
Okay. Hi there. Okay, we're talking first about artificial intelligence. The presenter was Tammy McCutcheon, who is a lawyer, so she was a little bit more cautious about the whole principle of AI than some of us who are super excited about it. So she talked a lot about kind of doing your due diligence and making sure that you have got all your bases covered before you adopt AI sorts of principles. And the first thing she said, a lot of people are worried that robots are going to take their job. And for most people, robots are not going to take your job, although she did specify a website that you can go to called willrobotstakemyjob.com, that will show you the likelihood of robots taking your job. But for most people, robots won't take your job, but it'll make your job a little easier. But what you need to do is figure out which jobs you would like to automate. Think of the problems that AI can solve. And for the most part, that's going to be the simple, repetitive tasks, the things that you're doing all the time that you're kind of doing over and over again. For example, here at Haley Marketing, we just started using, in the last few months, a chatbot. And the chatbot can answer, it works through our support desk, and it can answer the questions that occur regularly, the things where we have specific answers that we can plug in, and it's not something that's complex. Once things get complex, then it usually has to be handed off to a human who can analyze the problem. And she was also very adamant that you need to do your due diligence and not just to take things at face value. But AI definitely is something that is on the way, and we need to be ready to adopt it. And I'm going to hand this off to myself and go right to diagnosing the pulse points to recruiting success. And we were talking a lot in the session about the value that you add to your clients and customers. And as recruiters and staffing professionals, in order for you to be successful, it's important that you're not just taking orders, that you're showing your customers how you add value. And the way that you do that is by asking questions. That's the only way to really find out what the problems are. You know, don't just make the assumptions that you know what their problems are, because it can vary from industry to industry or something specific that's going on with at the time. And listen to understand what their problems are, and then just keep drilling down. You know, just keep asking why. It's almost impossible to ask why too often, because that really gets at the root of what the problem is and how you can solve it. And he closed by saying that speed and accuracy are still the most important things to clients. They're not really willing to give up one for the other. You need to they need to fill the positions fast, and it needs to be people who have got the qualities that they require. And I think next we've got Brad. We're back to you.
Kathy, thanks so much. And a big portion of the breakout sessions and our conversations overall were around recruiting. So not a surprise. In a historic low unemployment rate, we're going to see recruiting as a challenge. And this panel of Tom Erb, Tom Gimbel, and Brad Middleton really focused around that. They focused around how we can recruit more effectively and efficiently for our offices. And unfortunately, the data shows that about 80% of people out there won't even consider a staffing agency to help them find a job. It's not on their radar. So as an industry, it's up to us to explain and educate them on why staffing, temp agencies, recruitment agencies are a good option for them. We need to be career agents. Okay? We need to be representation for those people so more people see the value that we provide. There's a lot of value in what we do. We can help them find better career opportunities. We can help them advance their career. We can help them earn more money. We can help them earn a consistent paycheck. We can help them get a job fast, but we have to educate people on that. 70 to 80% of people will listen to a new job opportunity. We need to actively push those opportunities out to people, out to passive candidates, out to that 80% of people that don't think about a temp or an employment agency in their career search. Tom Gimbel from LaSalle Network had an interesting take on recruiting, and he said, recruiting isn't recruiting. Recruiting is sales. Okay? Your job isn't to go out there and find a candidate and present an opportunity to them and keep your fingers crossed and hope that they take it. Your job is to sell them on that position. You need to make candidates interested in that. It starts with your job postings. All too often, job postings are too boring. You wouldn't list your house on the real estate market and say, hey, this house has a driveway, there's a roof on it, and we have 2 doors. It's not interesting, but we do the same thing with our boring job postings. So make them interesting, sell the position, sell the value. We need to be consistent in how we recruit. All too often in staffing agencies, different recruiters are doing things differently, and they yield different results, and they give people a different impression of our organization. We need to centralize that. We need to make sure that everyone is following the same process. And skipping ahead a bullet or two, we need to make sure that people are internally using your ATS system. All too often, we see people starting a recruiting search from the ground up. Use your ATS. See what people you've already qualified. Start there instead of going to a job board resume database. Okay, get your internal team focused and following consistent processes. And last but not least, service. Service is really the key. All too often we hear staffing companies say, we provide better service. Few do, but the ones that do it great start with outstanding internal hires. They hire people that are great at delivering service. And that's really the key differentiator there. They're great at delivering service. They love delivering great service. If you can hire those good people internally, you're going to have a lot of business success. And then the next session that I went to was on candidate engagement. And Stacy Zappar from the Talent Agency has focused on recruiting for Fortune 50 companies and has really helped craft a process that works in identifying and recruiting top tier talent. And her take was that finding a candidate isn't hard. You can find a candidate with just about any skill set out there. The real hard part is getting them to actually respond to you and have a conversation with you about your opportunities. The average response rate on recruiter outreach is about 13 to 20%. Not very good. You're wasting at least 80% of your effort there. So what can we do to increase our response rates? Well, first, it really starts with getting beyond standard intake meetings. What I mean by that is when you get a job order, you really need to sit down with that client and have that hard conversation of what is truly a required skill and what's desired. There's a big difference there between required and desired. All right, and you need to have those hard conversations with your clients and say, hey, it is impossible to find a candidate with these 15 required skills. What on this list is not actually required? And how do you do that? Well, her response was great. She said, hand them the job description and have them read it out loud. Watch or listen to how they read that, okay? And they're probably going to laugh because a lot of job descriptions might be 5 or 10 years old. And they might say, boy, now that I read this out loud, these really aren't required. Or why was this on there as required? Okay, do that, have those hard conversations, and you'll be able to fill more positions. Again, focus on what's in it for me. And Stacy had mentioned that commute time is a biggie. If you can explain to people and find them an opportunity that is much closer so they regain an hour or two of their day in and day out, they'll take less pay. Okay, not a ton less, but they will take less pay for a better commute time. So think about what's in it for the candidate and use that to sell them on the position. And Stacy uses a 3-step approach, and this is how she gets an 85% response rate when she reaches out to a candidate that matches the skills for which she's looking to recruit. She starts with a short initial outreach message. She sends this through LinkedIn or email if she has the email address, but it's simple. It's not focused on saying, hey, would you like this position? It's, I have this open position. Do you know anyone that would fit this? A few days later, if she doesn't get a response, she follows up, but she lets them know that interviews have started and would like to know if they'd still be interested in the position or if they know anyone else. And then last but not least, even if they don't respond, she sends a thanks anyways, please stay in touch. And that yields an 85% response rate on candidates. So simple process, but you need to get in the habit of doing all of these things. With that said, I'm going to send it back to Kathy and talk to us a little bit about the voice of the client.
Thanks, Brad. This session was a bit of a different format. Nick, wow, I'm not even going to try that. He had facilitated a group of 3 employers who had volunteered to answer questions from this from the group who were all staffing professionals. And I was surprised when I was looking through the slides how close what they said was to what David and Brad talked about in How Not to Sell Staffing. Very much the same kind of topic. They want you to know their business, don't waste their time, and be a true partner. The biggest sins that they saw were just having kind of a miss on the people that you provide to them, and not only because you're wasting their time, but it's because they feel like they're not listened to. And another point that they made was that they cared, because one of the recruiters asked, what do you like better? Do you like getting email? Do you like getting phone calls? Do you like drop-bys? And the employers were unanimous that they didn't care of what the medium was, but what the message was. However you get in touch with them, know the business, know my problems, and have a solution. And the recruiters, any recruiters who are listening, be happy to hear the old school stuff that you've always been taught is very much the case. Dropping by can work. Calling early in the morning can work. Calling late at night can work. To get a decision maker on the phone, which is probably something everyone has heard before. But very much what David and Brad said, just about don't just call without doing your research before you pick up the phone. And with that, I'm going to send this to, it's me again, sorry. All right, new language staffing. This was a really, really great session. This was, it was some research that was done by a firm called Maslansky and Partners, and they're language strategists. And they analyzed the language that we use when we're talking to job seekers. And the methodology that they used was, if you remember some of the televised elections, you would see live how people were reacting to the words that were being used, and people were allowed to use dials to say if they liked a word, if they didn't like a word, what they were feeling about it. And that's how they came up with what job seekers want to hear. And the things that you say to people that we think are good things to say, like that you're going to have flexibility or that you're going to have a bridge to employment, are surprisingly don't resonate with job seekers as much as you would think they would, because those are perks of being in the job when you're already on the job, but the job seeker is focused on getting the job. So the things that you can do are, don't make promises that you can't keep, because it ruins the level of trust that they have in you. So don't promise a job. Promise that you can get them in front of the right people that can provide them with a job. Make the job search process easier for job seekers. And through an analysis of the exact words that resonated with job seekers, the statement they came up with as the ideal positioning statement or about the staffing industry in general was that job placement agencies help job seekers get noticed and land positions that match their qualifications at companies that are hiring. And they broke this down, job placement agencies, because job placement is what job seekers want to hear. They want to hear that they're going to be placed in a job. And the word agencies specifically, a lot of us don't like that word. It seems like it's old-fashioned. It seems like it's dated. It seems like it doesn't have as good a connotation as you would think. But that's the word that job seekers search for. That's the word that they associate with finding a job. The other thing is that you're going to help them land a position that matches their qualifications. That means you're not going to just put them into any job. You're going to find them a job that's right for what they do, and then at companies that are hiring. So when you say at companies that are hiring, you are showing them that this is a place where they can get a job. This is a company that's actually hiring. And that way you're kind of communicating that message that we call the bridge to employment, but you're communicating it in a way that resonates with them. And the takeaway at the end of this was, it's not what you say that matters, it's what they hear. And with that, I'm going to send it back over to Brian.
Thanks, Kathy. And that's actually a great segue into the Reputation from Services Storytelling to Supercharge Your Growth by Eric Gregg. And I'm sure a lot of the people on the webinar today are familiar with Innovero and their Best of Staffing Awards that they put out every single year. So that's the person who put on this session. And what they really believed is that when it comes to great service, everyone says that they have it. And I know Brad covered this earlier. And the stat that was provided in this session was that 90% of staffing companies identify that they have a key differentiator as great service. So just look around at all the peers in your city or in your industry, and 9 out of 10 are saying that we have the best service. So when you have a client coming to work for you or trying to work with you, or you have a candidate that might want to come work with you, that's what they perceive as everyone is saying. So they go online, they start looking reputations online to see what's the truth, what really is out there. So the reality is that because since 90% say that this is their differentiator, this has really now just become a standard. Great service is the standard. It's the bottom line you have to get to in order to be able to participate and get clients and get candidates. And the service that you put out every single day is the reputation that people see. Buyers care about your reputation. You can't create it. You can't choose what your reputation is going to be, but you can influence it. Influence your reputation on a regular basis. And how do you keep up to date with this? Well, as Eric said in the presentation, the heartbeat of your organization, that's your service methodology, that's how you want to have your company run every single day. And the pulse of your organization is what everyone else out there perceives to be the actual influence or the actual value of the level of service that you provide. So what he really believed is that every single chance you got, and this kind of goes back to some of the keynotes we talked about earlier, but every single chance you got, you need to win interactions. You need, especially during the stressful interactions, you need to provide a wow whenever possible. If someone comes to you with a challenging situation, go above and beyond, provide them with a solution that makes them happy, that solves their issues, and especially when there's tension or there's stress, make them happy, make it a surprise, and you can really start getting some positive reputation and positive view within your industry and provide some really great share-worthy service. So I believe the next one up is Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Brian. So I had the pleasure of attending Scott Wintrip's session, and he always offers phenomenal, actionable advice in his sessions. This year is no different. He started with a great example to illustrate the difference between the results of brilliant strategists and strategic brilliance. So Staffing Company A, they had a modest goal, a highly, highly detailed plan. Scott said it was the most detailed plan he'd ever seen, and a very experienced staff. So you think very well positioned to succeed here with a modest goal and such talented people and such attention to detail. And Staffing Company B had a big, hairy, audacious goal. If you've seen the BAG acronym out there, they had a detailed plan, but one that fit on a single sheet of paper. So pretty straightforward. And they had a mixed staff of some experienced and some fairly new to the industry. And the question was, which one hit their goal? It was Staffing Company B. And the reason why? No one at Staffing Company B was at a loss as to what their goal was and what they needed to do to achieve it. So that goes to the next point here. Simplicity is the key to execution. Simplicity is when your people can tell anyone they talk to what it is they're going to achieve, by when, why they are doing it, and who is responsible for doing it. So it's important that you don't get lost in the weeds and it's something so complex and so detailed that people can't articulate it. They get lost as to who's responsible and things fall down. So Scott also shared with us the 3 T's of strategic brilliance. First one's target. Have we chosen goals that are believable and achievable? Next is tactics. Are we requiring people to take enough appropriate action? And one of these actions Scott was good enough to go into detail on was asking better questions. I know Kathy hit on this earlier. Candidates and clients always believe themselves. So instead of trying to gain control, you can facilitate self-selling by simply asking better questions. For example, instead of asking, do you use staffing? Ask, under what circumstances would you use staffing? How often does that happen? If a candidate says they're happy in their current role, ask them, what would make you happier? So just those better questions, gets the person you're speaking to thinking and self-reflecting about what the right answers are, and produces a much different result. He also talked about getting rid of the repetitive old school tactics like feature benefit selling and moving to best practices like accomplishment marketing. showing off what you've actually accomplished and giving real-world examples as opposed to trying to draw on features and benefits that the client has to visualize from your sales pitch. And talent, the last T. Do you have enough of the right people taking enough appropriate action to meet your goals? Talent-rich departments have greater retention, they gain more market share, and create more wealth by many multiples over talent pool departments, and he showed that with the numbers. And that's it for this one. I believe we're passing the baton to Paula.
Thanks, Ryan. So this was a very interesting session, and as we all know, it's no secret that recruiting has really been an overwhelming issue over the last couple of years. And I guess the question was, how are you going to better attract talent, retain that talent, and even steal talent from your competitors? So Connie from EQC Talent Sourcing Experts talked about how you can raise that bar in recruiting and learn how to recruit like the FBI. So what exactly is neuro-linguistics programming? I'm going to say NLP from now on. That makes it much easier. Basically, it's based on research that links between how the mind works, how it processes language, and behavioral patterns. NLP techniques have leveraged processes in sales to better control, guide conversations to a preferred outcome in a sale or a referral. And based on that NLP model, here are some techniques that are going to help you recruit just like the FBI. So during an interview, make sure that you're always following up a question with a question. Don't ask yes or no questions. We all know that open-ended is the way to go. Engage that candidate. Let them talk. Ask for one thing at a time. Keep them focused. And always remember to say thank you and leverage it as a strategic pause. You always have to have the mindset that your best candidate is already working and that candidate is already working with your competitor. So the EQC targeted approach includes starting with those who you know, those candidates you've already previously offered opportunities to. Do your research, check them out on LinkedIn, Facebook, attendee lists, Hoover's, Factive, all these great resources online. And then pick up the phone and build your own talent community. Now, as far as new candidates, make sure that you vet them before you do anything else. Ask qualifying questions first before talking about their interests. And for example, here are some of those questions you might want to think about asking. Are you qualified for the position? Why would this be an ideal next step for you? What would motivate you to take or make that next change in your career? But lastly, you just really have to go for it. Remember that 24% of long-term success in recruiting is due to intelligence and skills, but 74% is attributable to mindset. That's really a powering statement there. That's what I took away from the session, and I think I'm turning it over to David now.
Back to me? Yeah, thanks, Paul. All right, so that was a highlight of a lot of the breakout sessions, and what we did today was only a fraction of what they had at this year's Staffing World. As you can see, lots of great ideas, not just simple tactics like here's best practices in recruiting, but many of the speakers this year really were challenging people to think differently. I love from Recruiting Like the FBI to Scott Wintrip, Eric Gregg, everybody's looking at how our industry does things. And going back to the keynote presentation that I recapped earlier, they're challenging us to stop doing tomorrow what we're doing today and what we've done yesterday and the yesterday before that, and to find new ways to approach the industry, to approach delivering value to our clients and candidates. And speaking of doing different things, we're now going to move on to some of the other areas of Staffing World. One of the popular sessions every year are the roundtables, and they're a small group, hot topics. I don't remember exactly how many there were this year, probably around 30, that they bring in a moderator to just facilitate the discussion, and then you get a table full of staffing professionals that have at it to talk about the topics at each roundtable. Now, unfortunately, of the 30, we didn't get to go to that many of them, but I will highlight a couple that I was at, and then I think somebody else is going to help on one of the other ones that's going to be very popular in today's discussion. So starting with the table that I personally ran, which is on branding and marketing. And so what I want to recap here is the questions that I was being asked. So the first is just about the latest trends in social media. What are we seeing companies do? Now, the easiest way to find out is to attend our webinars on social media marketing, but just a couple of things that we're seeing, and Brad, I'll welcome you to add anything to the conversation here, but we're seeing more and more staffing companies have gotten on board with the desire to create content, some in terms of trying to actually position themselves as thought leaders, but more for the point of making sure that in the online world they're visible. Now, the staffing industry isn't the only industry that's done that. Lots of industries have been upping their social media game, and as a result, platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn have said we really have to figure out who we're going to show content to. And for companies or brand pages, they want you paying to have people see your content. And that's one of the big trends we're seeing is to get the reach you want with your information on social media, you really have to think not just about creating content, not just about sharing content, but about integrating paid advertising to expand the reach of your content to the exact right audience. That's also related to right now, staffing companies, when they're thinking about recruiting, historically it's been, hey, I have a job opening, apply to this job. Well, when we're at near or beyond full employment, down below 4% in a lot of markets, just posting job openings won't get people to respond. You now not only have to have great jobs, you have to be a better place to work. And people are using social media and they're looking at their marketing in terms of creating an employment brand. The HR world's been starting to adopt employment branding over the last 5 to 6 years, really thinking about what they as corporations want to be seen as. The staffing industry hasn't really thought that much about their employment brand, but we need to. We need to think about each of our organizations. How do we convey a better brand and deliver a better experience to our candidates so that if candidate A can choose from staffing companies 1, 2, 3, and 4, well, why are they going to choose my company over those other alternatives? In terms of some specific social media tools, Facebook is really exploded as a recruiting tool. Facebook Jobs in particular, most of you probably know they came out with that. It's not great for every staffing company, but for a lot of lower level jobs, light industrial, clerical, entry level, some healthcare, when you combine promoting the jobs on Facebook Jobs with paid reach, very low cost per candidate. We're also seeing our clients doing a lot more with LinkedIn and some of their paid tools, and also getting more active in manual sharing of content as LinkedIn posts and LinkedIn groups to help drive primarily professional level candidate traffic back to the jobs, back to their websites to convince these professionals to work with their staffing organization. And lastly, there was some talk about companies experimenting with Snap and Instagram. There was one really good success story that we heard about a staffing company that at a college graduation created a filter, a geo-targeted filter that was just for that college graduation. And they were very effective at getting students at graduation to use their filter, but that instantly translated into a spike in traffic to their website, which resulted in more people being placed. Now, one disclaimer, that same company tried that at another college and got no response. So that's one of the things we're seeing as a trend in social media is it's a constant series of experiments. Not everything's going to be successful, and typically anything that works really well, a lot of people jump on the bandwagon, so then you have to go figure out what's next. It's more about that constant innovation. The second big question at my table was about building a branding or a rebranding strategy. Seems like a lot of staffing companies are deciding to change how they're known. Some companies are merging and consolidating brands. Other companies are splitting their parent company into discrete brands so that they have more specialization in specific job titles or niche markets. And so we were just talking about branding, the fact that it's not a slogan, it's not a logo. Branding is something that you live. It's how you take their company's core values and bring them to life in your service process, and then in every touch point with every client and every candidate, from how you answer the phones to how you sell to how you recruit to what's said on your website and what you do during sales calls. That's your brand. It's what you live. And the best staffing companies take branding to heart, and they they choreograph how the business operates so that they're delivering a very deliberate, very consistent brand identity to the marketplace, and one that matches the kinds of employers they want to be serving and the kind of candidates they want to place. And then lastly at my table was one on recruiting tools and techniques and lots of questions. But rather than answer that from my table's discussion, I'm going to jump to another table, because right next to me was a table where they were asking about recruiting insights. And there was some really fascinating discussions going on at that table. So one of the top recruiting challenges, interestingly enough, was job post quality. Everybody was lamenting how poorly their recruiters write job descriptions. So the companies that seem to have mastered getting beyond that as a problem tended to centralize the process. What they would do is they would have either one individual or a department where all of the new job orders funneled into, and those people would write the descriptions that would then be posted outside the organization. Other organizations were relying on training people, but the idea is you have to improve job post quality, because if you think about where your jobs go, LinkedIn, CareerBuilder, Monster, Facebook, well, when someone searches for whatever job you're trying to fill, they're likely to get a long list of jobs that look virtually identical. If you want your job to stand out, you have to think about, how did I write that post? What did I put in the job title? What did I put in the beginning of the description? Did I sell the opportunity? Because that job post isn't a list of job duties and requirements. It's an advertisement. Will the ads you're writing attract your ideal candidates? Also, in terms of recruiting, there was a lot of talk about building referral programs, and I don't know that anybody brought up the right answer, but the companies that were getting the most candidate referrals were the companies that had the most engagement throughout all the touch points with the candidates. That sort of led to the next thing is, if you want to fill more jobs, really look at your ATS. Brad mentioned this earlier. There was a discussion about what percentage of candidates coming into the ATS actually get placed. And the numbers we heard ranged from 16 to 28% of candidates getting placed. But most companies said as many as half of the candidates they're interviewing are placeable. So essentially they're spending money to recruit all these people, and anywhere from 22 to 34% of all the people they brought in could have been placed but weren't. So every staffing company needs to leverage their ATS better, make the ATS the first stop rather than the last stop when looking for talent. And I know it sounds obvious, but we heard story after story about the recruiters get a job order, they put the job order into the ATS, they don't even hit the search button there, they instantly post it because they have a job slot open on Indeed. And then they wait for the new candidates to come in because they want those fresh new candidates rather than having to fish through the older ones and see who's still available. You really need to leverage that ATS and leverage ATS technology, whether it's email, texting, even some, as Paul mentioned, the AI, some automated tools to find out who's interested in the jobs. I love this next statement. There is not a shortage of candidates, there's a shortage of good jobs. There was a lot of discussion about the fact that the hardest to fill jobs are either lousy employers or lousy pay rates. And if your clients have lousy pay rates or are not great places to work, a lot of companies that were saying the only strategy you have is, well, I shouldn't say only, you have a couple strategies. Strategy number one is just don't take their jobs. Strategy number two is tell them, look, I've got a limited pool of candidates available. They're going to go to the highest paying jobs. You're not one of them. I'd love to fill your job, but right now there's more demand than supply, so the supply can choose. If you want the supply to go to you, we have to make your organization a better place to work. Now, it may not mean you have to increase the pay to the highest in the market, but can you provide more temp to perm opportunity? Can you provide more training opportunity, more experiences they can learn? Can you just be a better work environment? That's really the second strategy, is working with clients, giving them market data to prove, hey, we have to raise pay rates or we're not going to attract talent. It's going to cost us in the long run because we're not getting jobs filled. So we may think we're saving money because we can't pay more than $9.75 an hour, but what's it costing them to have all those $9.75 an hour jobs unfilled because people are going to Burger King for $11 an hour? And then the last discussion of the recruiting was about Google jobs and Facebook jobs, and are they going to be game changers? And the jury's still out on that because they're both so new. But Google is already making a huge impact in being the first stop for someone searching for a job rather than the job board. So they have done a lot of research. They know how people search, and they are now, as probably everybody is well aware, displaying jobs immediately in search results, and then driving people back to potentially your ATS, potentially your company page. Right now, the primary place they're driving people are their partners, CareerBuilder, Snagajob, ZipRecruiter, and a few other sites. But as time goes on, we're going to watch how Google starts driving people. And I think it's a huge opportunity for staffing companies if the jobs are on your website, if they're optimized for SEO, and they're specifically optimized for Google Jobs. And one quick side note, we are really thrilled. Literally 2 weeks ago, we got an invite from Google Jobs to be part of the Google Jobs API beta, which means we're doing some really cool things to be integrating our career portal, our job board software, with Google Jobs. It's a bit of a crazy process because Google said you have 6 weeks start to finish to do everything or we drop you from the program. So our tech team is having a lot of fun, and we'll be telling everybody more about it probably just after the first of the year. The other one is Facebook Jobs. I mentioned them earlier. Facebook is making big inroads in the job market. First, you could post jobs. Now they're partnering with ZipRecruiter to help with the apply process. Now they're adding more resume data to Facebook. Given that they have a couple billion people that use their platform, they have the potential to be a major game changer. Right now, we recommend to all of our clients test. Put some jobs out there, promote the jobs, target specific job seekers, see what kind of a response it gets you. It doesn't work for every staffing company, but for some, it's far less cost than the traditional job boards. All right, and we have one more roundtable. So Brian, you want to talk to us about the trending insights?
Yeah, David, and thanks so much because you actually gave a really good foundation to what we talked about on the few tables that I went to that were primarily based on technology. But the first one I went to was trouble with recruiting, and I want to jump to point number 2 first. And that really goes to what you were just talking about with there are no bad jobs. Sorry, there's no bad candidates, just bad jobs. And the one tool that I thought was really cool is that there's a CareerBuilder pay rate where they basically crowdsource pay rates for different jobs in the area. And some of the companies were saying that they were actually using that to then go and use it as evidence to their clients and say, hey, look, if you want to have this machinist available, or if you really want to attract the appropriate candidates for that job, here are some really great references and tools. Here's a great report, and you can see what everyone else in the area is getting paid. So if you want that candidate, now you know what you have to pay them. So that was the first thing. But to jump into some of the social aspects, because that's what I spent most of my time at with the tables, there's a lot of excitement going on around how can companies use social media, whether it's Google for Jobs or if it's Facebook Jobs, how to maximize the reviews, 5-star reviews on these sites. There's a lot of energy there, and what's really exciting is even though it's been out for a while, people posting to social media, but there's still some hesitation amongst a lot of the people at the tables because they know that they should be getting into it. And I know a lot of you out there listening probably are thinking the exact same thing. I know we have to get into it, but some hesitation as to how to exactly execute a strategy. So I know that was a lot of feelings amongst the participants at these tables. So I know a lot of them have jumped in on their own. Some of them have contracted through other people, but just getting in and starting to just play around with it and find out how can it benefit their company. They've been really playing around with that on their own and seeing what kind of benefits they can get for their recruitment efforts. Same thing that I know David talked a little bit about earlier as well. There's a lot of questions and especially a really big question mark on what is the effectiveness of Snapchat and Instagram. And unfortunately, there wasn't a real big consensus by the time we were done with our roundtable because it really depended on the industry. It depended upon the entry level or experience required for a job. So there were just too many question marks. And as David said, sometimes you can have really great success with a Snapchat strategy. With one instance, you can try and duplicate it to do the exact same thing over again. And it doesn't mean that it's going to work 100% all the time. So you really have to play around with it, experiment with it, see what works for your company, and see if you can find some best practices online for other people doing the exact same thing. And the one last thing that I found really cool is that a lot of them pretty much around the table said that they're starting to experiment with video, and they've been finding a lot of really great success with that. So it was cool to see some new technologies and some new strategies on how to get attention by the job seekers and clients on social media by doing that. So, yeah.
Thanks, Brian. I also want to talk on one point is the reviews that you mentioned. You know, now so much of our reputation is controlled by our candidates, and particularly those candidates we can't place. We had a lot of discussions about reputation management, and I know it's something that Innovero has expanded Best of Staffing to be more of an ongoing service. And Haley Marketing Group, we have our reputation management service, but we're finding it's very essential for staffing companies to be proactive about reaching out to the candidates who are being placed to get testimonials, to encourage them to leave online reviews, because that candidate may see your job post, and then if they go and search that job and they see next to your name, oh, here's 1 star for ABC Staffing on Google Reviews, on Facebook, on Indeed, that is going to kill you because they're not going to apply. They'll go back to the list of jobs and they'll apply with someone else. So that proactive management is so essential. All right, well, we've got 2 big topics left to cover. Our first, the Genius Awards, and then lastly, our take-home lessons from Staffing World. We'll do the Genius Awards really quickly because we were thrilled to have a number of our clients selected for Genius Awards this year. So, Brad, if you'll talk about the first one, a grand prize winner for social media temp staff.
Yeah, very excited. We're handling temp staff social media, and as you can see here, we're trying to build in and bring in very personal things. The picture at the center is a top candidate that they've placed. It's reached a lot of people, and I won't spend too much time here, but throughout the week, throughout each day, we're posting great content that links back to their website and encourages engagement, encourages action. Over the year, they've seen a 46% increase in overall website traffic because of this, 670% increase from social media. They've gotten 572% new users to the website. They're getting in front of people that they otherwise wouldn't have, new people that didn't know about temp staff. From Facebook alone, we've seen a 952% increase. So just great looking content, valuable content, and great results.
Thanks, Brad. And I'll share the next one, which is this is one of those everything old is new again. So we have a lot of people who talk to us and we'll be talking about sales lead generation strategies, and they're like, oh, I want to have an email campaign. Oh, I want to have a social media campaign. And we're like, well, don't rely 100% on digital. Digital is awesome. It should absolutely be part of your mix. But sometimes old school is the best school. And I tell people about direct mail. Direct mail is the express lane at the supermarket because there aren't many people there. So what you see now is a direct mail campaign for a company called Keepers. And we had the theme of a movie and casting for talent. So we had a poster we sent out about your next star coming soon. And then we had pieces that were teaching people about how to cast and even what looked like a script that showed the Keepers game plan. And what was really cool about this program is in just a couple of months, it generated 88 client appointments, 20 companies that they hadn't been able to get in the door with. Of those 20 companies they met with, 8 out of 20 became clients, resulted in an 11.2% increase in sales in their temporary side. Plus, they weren't planning on this, but they ended up closing over $22,000 in direct placement fees in just the first couple of months. So lots of positive results from this direct mail grand prize winning campaign. The next category we had a winner is wanted to congratulate Wood Personnel for their brand new website. So we worked with them on building a new site that really wanted to emphasize their primary focus, people. The other thing we did that was very unique with this site is a lot of times when we design a website, you think about features and functionality and you think about design elements. In this case, we started with information architecture. We wanted to start with how do people use the site? What are they looking for? What are they trying to get to? And we came up with some really unique concepts in terms of driving interactions and making every page focused on getting people to respond. The result, not only did we have another grand award from American Staffing Association, but they've seen a big increase in response to the website because every page is focused on driving an action, applying to a job, opting in for an email newsletter, in some way contacting Wood Personnel about their services. We also had a second winner, Able Associates, for their website. And Paula, why don't you tell us a little bit about their project?
Great, thanks, David. So I work directly with Able, been working with them for years, and this is the second website we've done. And they actually came to us looking for high energy look and feel that had to be user friendly. And they needed a site that was simple to navigate, mobile friendly, and integrated seamlessly with their applicant tracking system. And also social media was a must. So their new site needed to stand out from national staffing sites who they compete against and make it easy to find the information visitors are looking for, whether they're job seekers or employers. And we played off the sailboat image in the Able logo. The site is built around a sailing theme, as you can see from the example, and it features images and headlines that support that unique messaging. A responsive design, branded mobile plugin ensured that no matter what device visitors are coming from, whether smartphone to desktop, that the site was going to look great and be easy to use. And because Able wanted to target job seekers primarily, features of the new site included a job board, Haley Marketing's job board software integrated with their applicant tracking system, a refer a friend form, an informative blog. There are some very strong call to action throughout the site that help drive job seekers to search jobs, apply online, and convert them at an alarming rate. So the new site is just not pretty. Since going live in March of this year, the site has had 4,500 site visitors, which is a 54% increase over the old site, and a 32% increase in organic search. So of the 21% that access the site from mobile devices, 81% used the site from Massachusetts and Rhode Island, exactly what our search engine optimization was targeted to do. So that being said, I think I'm off to Brad now.
Thanks, Paul. The next award winner was RPC Company, and they won in the social media category as well. And what's great about this campaign is they used part of their social media engagement as a way to generate business leads. They have Haley Marketing Group's Talent Showcase, which allows them to feature top talent that they've recruited and talent that's maybe just sitting in their ATS system on their website. So they can showcase this talent, clients can come there, learn more about their employees, and they can use social media to drive traffic there. And through a very targeted social media, organic and paid program, they were able to drive 39% more people to that Talent Showcase page. And again, that's 39% more potential employers. They're driving revenue through social and through the Talent Showcase. And with that said, let's take it on to the next area. Let's wrap up some of our staffing world's lessons learned. And Ryan, I think you're first up.
Thanks, Brad. So a couple takeaways, three in fact. First one was about purpose. How many of your employees have a concise answer when you ask them what their purpose is and what your staffing firm's purpose is? As Mark Schulman said, passion's not enough. It needs to evolve into purpose. When you're aligned with your purpose, like Jonathan from Coca-Cola, and even better, you align with your client's purpose, you benefit from great clarity in how you meet an increasing complex world. Next one is KISS, not the band with Gene Simmons lashing his tongue around, but keep it simple, stupid, or as Scott Winthrop called it, keep it simple, Scott. Simplicity is the key to execution. You don't want your purpose-driven mission to be clouded by complexity that confuses your team. You can set big goals and hit them if you just keep things simple. And lastly, you know how everyone else buys something on Amazon? You aren't alone. It's not just for widgets. Staffing firms are also being chosen or skipped over every day based on the reviews that are out there. With historically low unemployment, your candidates in particular have lots of choices. What are they going to see when they Google you? You want to help them sell themselves and really show off with a great reputation out there. And to Paula?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So the biggest lesson I learned was being prepared. I spent totally the majority of my time at the conference speaking with our clients and visitors to our booth, and I totally give all recognition to us primarily making sure that we did pre-show marketing because it's always worth it. Also knowing that clients want to help us solve larger problems and not settling for the first order problems that your clients bring to you. Remember that. Figure out what these higher order problems are that they're facing. See how you can help solve those, or tie what you do to offer to those higher order problems. And you have to always innovate, or you will be innovated totally out of business. I think strategy is most important. It's critical. Take time to think strategically, not just tactically. If you could take that away, that is very important. Kathy, you're up.
Hi, Paula. Thank you. This was actually my first Staffing World, and my primary goals were to get to talk to a lot of our clients and potential clients firsthand to hear what the problems were that they were seeing every day. And I definitely achieved that. We had tons of booth traffic. We were really fortunate there, and just all of the breakout sessions and lunches and after-hours events. There were lots of people to talk to, and everyone was happy to talk. And the second thing that I wanted to do was go to a lot of sessions to learn some of the innovations in the industry and, just sort of keep up and find out what's coming next. And I achieved that as well. There was a lot of really good sessions. And what I took away from those and from my conversations is that staffing is the business of asking questions. And why is the most important question. We don't ask it enough, because this is what, sometimes people will come to you with a problem that they want solved, and you really have to get at the why before you can come up with the correct resolution. And again, this came directly from the voice of the client. The number one thing that will get a firm fired is not listening. So it all comes down to asking questions and listening to the answers. And then the final major takeaway I had was actually from Scott Wintrip's session, was that an empty seat is a painful distraction for a hiring manager. So when you can get in there and take that pain away from them, then they're going to remember you, and they're going to think of you in a positive light, and they're going to call you again. And from that, we're going to go to Brian.
Thanks, Kathy. And for the first one, I'm actually going to go back to Mark's keynote as well, and to really stress that at all times you need to be your best self and fully committing to the task at hand. Whether it's because you're motivated by the reviews that are out there on social media, because there's so many different avenues that people can, or your clients and candidates can post about your errors or just mediocre service, and that can be shared negatively online. It's important to always fully commit to the task at hand and give your current task everything that you have. Next thing is, coming from the roundtables that I was at, and plus some of the other sessions, digital marketing is crucial for recruiting. And I know that sounds kind of simple, but as more of the pay-per-click advertising is coming into play, geo-targeting and other advertising like this, moving beyond just posting to Facebook or LinkedIn, a lot more players are entering the field. And figuring out how that works for your company is going to be so important moving forward in the next year. And lastly, that passion again. Just what are you passionate about? What can you really put yourself into and really make a positive impact in the lives of your clients and your candidates, and what difference can you make? So that's what I really took away from this. Brad?
Thanks, Brian. David mentioned it earlier, there isn't a talent shortage, there's a good job shortage. I love that quote. So it's up to us as an industry to educate our clients, be a consultant, explain to them when a pay rate is too low, why it's too low, explain the difference between required and desired, and get them to really pick and choose, because with the historic low unemployment rate, we need to do everything we can to take good job orders so that the candidates that we do have can get placed. Use your ATS system, be systematic about it, leverage that, make sure that your recruiters are using it to its fullest. Don't start your search in a job board resume database, start it in your own ATS. You'll fill positions faster and more efficiently. And last, look at your recruitment spend. We talked with a lot of companies that are reallocating where they spend their recruitment dollars based on very specific data that shows them where placed candidates are coming from. If you're not tracking that information, you have to start so that you can spend your recruitment dollars effectively. Look at what channels are producing. And David, why don't you wrap things up for us?
Sounds good. Thanks, Brad. All right, so my takeaways from this year's Staffing World. Number one, no shocker here, recruiting is an overwhelming issue. But right now, everybody needs to challenge themselves. How are we going to attract, retain, and steal talent? you can't just run job posts. You can't just spend more money with CareerBuilder and Indeed and expect that the job orders are going to get filled. You got to think about, what are we going to do to make people want to work for us? What are we going to do to make sure we keep redeploying the people we've already paid to recruit? And what can we do to win candidates away from our competitors, so from a staffing perspective, we are the employer of choice, the best place to work? The second takeaway for me is this whole candidate underutilization. It's a huge cost. So, how are you going to increase placement rates? If you have a database full of people that are placeable and you're not placing them, what are you going to do to get more of them out? Brad mentioned, don't do the first search in the ATS, in the resume database on the job board. Do it in your own ATS. But the next thing is start changing your mindset, innovate in your approach to candidates. You're not just there to fill job orders, you're there to place people. So if you've got placeable candidates and you don't have a home for them, you need more job orders. And lastly, this is something I personally have been saying for a long time, and I think the staffing industry knows, but if 90% of an industry says our difference is service, your difference is not service. However, the experience that your service process delivers to the clients and candidates can be a differentiator. If you're looking at every touch point, if you've process mapped it, if you've made it easier, faster, more entertaining, just more fun to work with your organization than anybody else, that will attract people to want to work with you. That makes your organization memorable. That makes people perceive you as higher quality, and ultimately that will make you successful in filling your job orders in this tight job market. So we did it. I said we'd be between an hour and an hour and a half, and in an hour and 20, we have actually come to the end. So thank you very much to everybody who have stuck it out through all the information from Staffing World 2017. As I mentioned at the very beginning, next year we're in Washington. So we really look forward, hopefully, to seeing everybody on the call in DC next October. And if nothing else, then we hope we'll see you back at Lunch with Haley in just a couple of weeks. We're going to be doing a product demo webinar, giving you an update on blogging for staffing. As more and more companies do blogging, does it really work? The answer is yes, and we'll show you specifically how. And then at our next year-end show and tell, we've decided to ask a lot of our project managers and creative team about their favorite projects they've done this year. And so we decided to wrap up the year on December 14th with a show and tell Lunch with Haley, and you can reserve seats for both of these at lunchwithhaley.com. So team, thanks so much for the great insights today. And everybody else, thank you for being part of today's Lunch with Haley.